Good evening and welcome to the March 7th, 2018, 5:30 regular meeting of the Council of Governments. If you would please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Our first item is the consent agenda. The consent agenda items are expected to be routine and non-controversial and will be acted upon by the council at one time without discussion. Any council member, staff member, or interested party may request that an item be removed from the consent for further discussion. Are there any consent items that the council would like to see pulled? Are there any consent items that the public would like to be pulled? Seeing none, do we have a...
I'll move this item, Mr. Chair.
Moved by Councilmember Tofinelli moved. Councilmember Middies seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Approved 7-0.
Mute on.
Item number 6 is public comment. Public comment should be 5 minutes per person and shall be limited to items that are within the subject matter jurisdiction of the council and not on the posted agenda. Is there any public wishing to speak this evening? Seeing none, we will move on to item number 7. A presentation on the formation of the Calaveras Transit Agency, Joint Powers Agreement, and Transition Plan.
All right, good evening, Council. Staff brought this discussion to the COG Board in September and again in November with a contract award to Phil McGuire of McGuire Management Consultancy to support the city and county and facilitate a process to form a joint powers agency to manage transit. I think this board is well aware and has been involved in addressing, the issues that surrounding transit for the past several years. So this is really an extremely positive step in partnership between the city and county. I'm really happy, to see the leadership willing to develop a long-term solution and structure to the issues that have surrounded transit. And I think at this point I'll introduce Phil McGuire of McGuire Management Consultancy, who has really been integral to working with the city and county and working towards this goal. And Phil will kind of walk us through a really brief presentation on kind of the process, how we got here, and what the next steps are, and what this means for the COG board.
Thank you, Amber, Mr. Chair, members of the council. Am I good with the microphone here? It's nice to be here. This really is a huge situation, a huge success for Calaveras County in the way this is developing. Amber did a good job in providing some background on this. Some of you have been involved pretty intimately in the process, and for those of you who haven't, well, I'll bring you up to speed tonight. I'll start with some of the steps that led to the formation of the JPA. So back last summer, August, September, the county and city both appointed members to what came to be called the policy group, which was the advisory body that was charged with considering all of the technical details about the formation of an agency to assume responsibility for transit service delivery in the county. In November, I was retained to provide background to this. I have been involved, as I guess you would know, having been involved in the selection process with my resume, I've been involved in other JPA formations and that sort of thing several times prior. So this seemed an obvious opportunity for me to work with locals here and make this happen. Also in November, the policy group adopted what came to be called the guiding principles for this process. And those were really a series of statements that were debated and then adopted that were meant to provide some framework for going forward with the whole consideration of the JPA formation. And so among those was, at the very outset, the idea that the intent was to form a joint powers authority. So There wasn't debate about what this group was intended to do. That was what the group was going to do, was form a joint powers agency. Among the other principles listed were the fact that the joint powers agency was intended to be in position legally to exist and begin doing business by April 1, and that by July 1, it would take over responsibility for all aspects of transit service delivery, most importantly, the service contract with Paratransit Services. It's the vendor that provides the service here. The policy group also was intimately involved in the development of the JPA agreement itself. So there were many meetings and discussions about that, much consideration of specific language, and then following the agreement at that level by the group that there was consensus on the JPA language itself. That language that was then sent off to the legal counsels of all the participating parties, so the county, the city, and COG. Then, important milestone, the County Board of Supervisors approved the JPA agreement at its meeting on February 13th, and the City of Angels similarly approved the agreement at its meeting on April 20th. So what's expected of a new transit agency for Calaveras County? First of all, and we'll have much more discussion about this, and certainly when the time comes, I'll answer any questions anybody might have about the way this will work. But the idea here is that an agency dedicated to transit decision-making be created. And so right now, under the structure where transit is operated by the county, obviously the county has many, many things on its agenda. And transit is one, both at the policy and at technical or staff level. The idea here, of course, is that transit be the agenda for the new agency. And so you have a dedicated board focusing on policy issues, and as I'll get into shortly, staff services dedicated to this that are both efficient and take advantage of existing skills that are transit related. The idea, of course, too, was to broaden the decision-making and involvement by the city. Right? To this point, the city hasn't really been a formal participant in decision-making about transit. So the formation of the JPA with the city as an equal partner provides for that opportunity. It's also intended to streamline and really improve the grant application and management process. As some of you, maybe all of you know, there has been some at least temporary use of county general funds to support transit in the absence of timely submittal of grant applications or such things as a TDA claim. So hopefully with the new organization, that sort of situation will be eliminated. And every opportunity is there for it to be eliminated with this new situation. And then really in that process to take full use of the available funds for transit. And there is discussion about all that. If there are questions about that, I can elaborate, but just safe to say that it is important that the availability of other funding, like federal funding, be taken advantage of in order that the local funds that have wide application not be used in their stead. It's also expected that in this process, there will be various staff efficiencies. Again, I'll talk a little bit more about that in a couple minutes. And that in those efficiencies, there will be an improvement in the general management of transit services here in the county. As part of that, and really other associated decisions, there is the expectation that there will be other cost efficiencies, not just at the staff level, but there will be a hard look at service deployment and the whole approach to delivering services, largely, of course, through a transit contract, which is in the works right now. And then various other kinds of things that might be done eventually to involve a broader cross-section of the community in transit-related services. And then finally, there is the expectation that the whole issue of accountability and transparency be improved. And so literally already there are discussions underway about improving some of the reporting that is done of transit statistics and performance that would then be available on a perhaps more consistent basis to this body and others in the county. And so, again, many changes already in consideration with the formation of this new agency. Important tonight for discussion here is really what's the relationship between the new transit JPA and Calaveras COG. Well, to begin with, they are separate legal entities. So obviously the COG resulted from a joint powers agreement itself. So too the new transit agency, but those agreements are separate and distinct. So they are separate legal entities with their own authority to enter into contracts or sue and be sued, the usual list of things that an agency can do. However, back to my mention of the formation of the JPA agreement itself and the development of its structure, it was decided that largely for efficiency and other reasons, it would be appropriate that the board of directors of the COG also serve as the board of directors for the new transit agency. And so that is the structure that has gone forward to both the city and county and has now been approved. Same too with the board officers. So the key officers of the COG board will also serve as the officers of the JPA board. Again, separate legal entities, but shared policy responsibilities. It's also intended, and this gets to the efficiency of staff services, that the JPA will purchase staff services from the COG. And there are various reasons for that, not the least of which is the ability to share skills that are already existent on the COG staff and which will be augmented once an existing position at the COG is filled with some focus on transit skills. But also the fact that doing that eliminates the need to create a whole new benefit program, new pension programs, and things of that sort that go along with positions like this, and instead take advantage of the fact that all of that structure currently exists with the COG. And so it really facilitates things to set this up as a purchase of services from the COG staff. And then the Transit JPA will manage the operations contract. And really the operations contract makes up 80 or 90% of the total expense of the transit system in the county. So it's a very large aspect of this. And so again, as I mentioned about the timing, there will be this transition period, again, I'll touch on this too, but running from April 1st, the formation date of the JPA, through July 1, when the JPA takes full responsibility. And during that period, the contract that will be in place with the vendor will be assigned to the new Transit JPA, again, effective July 1. This org chart displays really what I've been describing here. So again, it's two separate JPAs, one for transit and the other for the COG, but there is the intent to share staff services between the two. So Amber will serve as the executive director of the COG and also as the executive director of the Transit JPA. And the numbers that you see associated with the positions are estimated time allocations for the new JPA work. The rest of it, of course, being dedicated to COG work. And this, again, was an estimate used to develop initial budget estimates for the operation of the new JPA. And this will all be really sorted out during the first year of operation through things like very detailed time records of the employees and that sort of thing. So we got to really see who does what for the JPA and what work they do, and same person might do for the COG. So that's the structure that is set forth in the new JPA
Phil?
agreement. Yes.
Can you go back? Mm-hmm. Did you put this together? Did you put this PowerPoint together? Is it you?
Well, I had a hand in it.
You had a hand in it?
Yes.
Okay. Top box up there, you had the city before the county. I just wondered how that goes.
You know, I had nothing to do with this.
All right, I just had to ask.
Okay then. Point well
I
taken.
got my eye on you.
I see that. So then quickly to go over the milestones again. Again, the county adopted the JPA agreement on February 13th. The city did so on February 20th. The agency will become a legal entity effective April 1 and be in a position to begin to do business. And so actually, for purposes of all of you who are going to serve double duty starting at that point, the first JPA board meeting is scheduled for April 4th, which of course is the next meeting date for this board. The transition, as I mentioned, will run between April and July with a whole list of tasks I'll talk about in a minute being accomplished during that period of time. And then as of July 1, the JPA assuming full responsibility for transit service. So this is really an abbreviated list of transition tasks that are going to be hopefully accomplished during the period from April to July. But among others, of course, the establishment of the organization's approach to doing business, handling its meetings and how it's going to share these kinds of services with the COG, that sort of thing. And I'll get, the last slide I'm going to cover tonight is going to be a little bit about the upcoming JPA board meeting. So then, as I mentioned earlier, there will be an agreement between the COG and the new JPA for staff services. So we'll be developing that soon. That will set forth all the terms of that agreement and again, save having the new JPA having to literally hire employees and create a benefit structure and all that sort of stuff. That things are greatly streamlined as a result of this approach. The establishment of agreement with the county auditor and treasurer for accounting services. Again, you would be familiar with this because that's the way COG does business right now. And so this will not be a difficult thing to establish either. We've already had some discussions of this. The agreement with the county for that service will be similar to what the COG currently has. The assignment of the vendor contract will happen in that period up to July 1 with presumably its effective date being July 1. There will also be the transfer of assets that now belong to the county and will ultimately be transferred to ownership by the JPA. Again, the JPA is a legal entity. It can own property, it can enter in contracts and do all those things. And so the intent is that the JPA will eventually own all of the property, most of which, certainly by way of value, is the transit fleet. But there are various other assets as well. There will be an effort to coordinate with the funding agencies and transfer funding agreements. Again, that dialogue is already underway, looking at the steps necessary by agencies like Caltrans to reassign grants that are now in the name of the county to the new JPA. And so we don't expect any major problems in a transfer like that either. They're aware of this kind of thing. And from what I understand recently, apparently there's a lot of this stuff going on elsewhere in the state right now. It's kind of an active subject. And so agency formation is happening elsewhere. And so Caltrans is faced with these very same questions for other jurisdictions. The development of the 18-19 budget and claim for funds. The expectation certainly is that for the year beginning July 1, the new JPA will form its own budget and be submitting its own claim for funds. So that process will begin during the transition period. It'll come before the JPA board somewhere in that period of time and be ready to go July 1. And then the last thing here that's certainly not meant to be least on the list is to really begin to discuss the whole issue of transit service delivery and perhaps take a fresh look at some creative approaches to serving, the unique needs of a county like this. And so that dialogue will start very soon and is intended, from early discussions we've had, to be a pretty broad conversation with folks in the county about what really the needs are and whether some of the really traditional approaches to transit, which we typically see now, are really best suited for the unique needs of the county. So again, back to this board and the new JPA board. The first meeting, as I said, is slated for April 4th. The idea in our discussions about board protocols would be that this board, the COG board, would convene as now, and that it would conduct its business and adjourn as the COG board and reconvene following that meeting as the transit agency board. And so it would have a separate agenda and separate materials, you would all be the same, and staff would largely be the same, other than perhaps if there were things that the Transit JPA were doing, say by way of consulting agreements for services or something like that, that didn't necessarily tie to the COG. The JPA would be considering that itself. And so we're already looking at possible agenda items for the first meeting in April. There is a transition plan which was included in your board packet, so you have had a chance to see that. There will be updates to that prior to the April meeting, and so that will be back before the new agency board. We expect that the agreement with the county for accounting services likely will be ready to go for discussion and presentation to the new JPA board in April. Same with the agreement for staff services. Again, that's not going to be terribly complicated to put together, but there will be all of the necessary detail to value performance and handle all the accounting issues associated with sharing staff services. At some point, perhaps as soon as that first meeting, we'll look at a draft budget for the new JPA. We've already have a draft in the works, and so I think it'd be the right time for the new board to take a look at that, perhaps look at what differences there might be between that budget and the budget that has been in place in the past, even the budget the county's operating on today. And you'll get to see some of the differences in the way this whole new agency will be managed. And finally, we may be prepared by then for legal action regarding authorization as the agent for certifications and assurances that are necessary for the various legal agreements that will be a part of this whole thing. Again, down the road, there will be things like even down to advertising agreements, which the county currently has with various vendors for advertising on vehicles and so on. Those will eventually be transferred to the new JPA. Responsibility for bus stops and even the legal liability for bus stops is being evaluated and is likely to be restructured to be the responsibility of the new JPA also. So there's a lot of detail to work out. But the critical thing is both key bodies, the county and the city, have agreed, and so it is full speed ahead to implementation. So that concludes my comments. If there are any questions or thoughts about this, now is the time.
Council, this is an informational item. There is no action to be taken this evening, but if there's any council comments.
Phil, I'd just like to express my appreciation for what you went through with the Angel City Council. I think that the questions were very valid, and the concerns that you addressed, as well as Amber addressed, were well needed to allay any fears or concerns that there might be over what we're trying to do here. And so I just want to say thank you. It was very appreciated.
Thank you.
I want to thank you, Phil, too, for all the work you've done and the job you've done, and even going forward. I assume you'll be with us at least till April 1st.
I'll be here at least till April 1st.
Yeah, so.
Yes, so thank you.
Thank you.
And I just want to express my gratitude as well. Thank you for all your work with all of this and working with that. One question I did have is, with this, when is the public going to be made aware of these changes and that, that kind of stuff?
Go ahead. Well, I'll let you go and then I can follow up.
Just as we publish the agendas for the COG, the agendas will go out, and there's been agencies that we work with that I think that are aware of the new JPA. Amber, did I forget anything, or you want to?
No, but do you mean like a
Yeah.
public notice blast
Yeah,
or
PR,
some form?
Something in the newspapers
that-
or something going out.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know, the newspaper has contacted me already because they did attend, the Board of Supervisors meeting. So I would anticipate probably, they would probably write a story. So I anticipate that coming out. But, I can work with Phil on maybe some public information
Or
blast
press release.
or public
Yeah.
release that, notifying of the new agency change. I think we were waiting, until there was official execution of the agreements, and then maybe till our first JPA board meeting, and then maybe at that time it would be appropriate to send out public notices.
And if I might comment on that real quickly too, I think there are really sort of two levels for that. One is the level we're all at here. You know, we're involved in legal issues about this, and we're going to be handling all kinds of agreements. And yes, the world ought to be made known sooner or later that this has happened and that a new agency is responsible for any buses. But at the consumer level, you know, initially I would say they're not going to see any great difference. The vehicles are going to look the same. The services on April 1 and probably even as far out as July 1 are going to be the same as they are today. There isn't time to change those things. But I would say too that on the list of things to consider in a transition process is the whole issue of branding the system and whether or not the system name stays the same, the colors stay the same, things like that. But again, none of that will change in the first several months.
And I want to thank the committee that did us a lot of work. You guys and staff did tremendous work on this. It was exciting at times, and I just want to thank you so much for all the work you did, Amber, Melissa. And we have somebody from California Transportation Authority here in the room, and we're talking about branding. See the first three letters right there? And then you see right here? We were talking about calling it Caltrans. No, huh?
That's taken.
There might be a higher up for that discussion.
He came in very chipper tonight. Yeah, I wanted to also thank you and for everyone for something that is totally new to me, you know, to take something that's, to me, very complex, and it was presented really simple, in a way where I could comprehend and get involved in it. So I really appreciate that it was presented in that manner. I think that you did a very good job that way. Thank you.
At this time, I think if we'd like to offer any opportunity for public comment, it was an informational item, but I don't see any. So, Mr. McGuire, thank you very much also for all your time and effort.
Thank you very much.
Phil, we won't hold the Hawkeye thing against you.
Oh, man.
My wife's a Cyclone.
Some school rivalries here. Thank you.
Item number 8, the fiscal year 2017-18 mid-year financial reports and budget actuals. Ms. Raggio.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This item is an informational item to the council. In my staff report, I break down the activity over the first half of the fiscal year, and I break it down by the 7 funds. On page 70, this is the budget to actuals report. On the right-hand side, you see the percentage remaining in the year-to-date amounts. Starting on page 73, these are the balance sheets for the 7 funds, including their balance and liabilities and projects program. If the council has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Council?
I noticed that on page 66, there's a cash carry reserve of $303,000. It's right there at the beginning. Cash flow reserve retained within the fund, $303,906.
Oh, yes.
That's a really good reserve.
I think I
For the
noted
size of our
that it's,
budget.
you know, 22% currently.
Is there any policy established within COG as to what that, whether there's a minimum reserve that the board would like to see, or is there any?
Not at this time. There is not a policy in place.
Okay. I also want to note on page 67, no transit claim has been received as of February 28th.
No.
Okay, and that is done in cooperation or coordination with the auditor, Public Works, and COG?
Yes, we're working with all the stakeholders at this time.
Do you think that will be completed in time for the transition?
I would have to hand that over.
Oh, well, yeah, I think that's the goal of all the parties working together.
Okay.
Yeah.
If there's challenges, I'm sure that you'll let the board know.
Yeah, absolutely. We're, keeping the CAO and Public Works Director apprised of the process.
Page 69 was rather interesting to me. It has to do with OES, Cal OES. We really haven't undertaken any programming on that since 2012-13 fiscal year. So you're holding 102,000 in that fund, is that correct?
Yes.
None of that money's been given back, so it's basically there pending our use of it?
Yes, and currently fiscal year 14-15 and 15-16 are set to expire in March. COG staff is working on extensions to keep that funding. That'll be turned in and received by Cal OES, and I'll update the CIP.
Thank you. I'd like to also see whether or not that's something that our OES coordinator can work with COG on as well, because I'm sure that there's other ways that we might be able to use that funding.
And the executive director has notified the CAO, I think approximately 4 months ago, that this funding was available.
Okay.
Yeah, but now that you got a new OES coordinator, we can reach out to them again.
Yeah, I think it'd just be a step. Thank you.
Any further council comment? Any public comment? Seeing none, this was an informational item. Thank you, Ms. Reggio. The agenda item number 9, approving the fiscal year 2018-19 draft operations budget. Ms. Reggio.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In the attached worksheet, you can see the breakdown for the fiscal year 18-19 draft operations budget. The budget totals $542,453. We had a decrease from last year. Last year we had some turnover and paying out vacation time, so we've seen a decrease approximately $10,000. Again, this is a draft. We'll be coming back with a final. The draft OWP is due to Caltrans in March. So if anyone has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
I have a question on packet page 84, on 5257 office expenses. I see we purchased a server and a desktop station at 5,000 and 1,000, and then it says budget total 7,000 next to that. But then on page 82, it only says 4,000 under that 5257 line.
I think that's the difference. That's the change. So I budgeted
Okay.
7,000, and then I always show the change. So the change from last year is an increase of 4,000.
Okay, thank you.
Melissa, is there an expectation with the transit services actually being an independently billed component of salaries now for several staff members? Do you expect that our staff salaries will decrease due to the fact that some of that will now be picked up by transit?
Well, this operations budget will reflect all employees and the full FTE budgeted, or benefited costs.
Okay.
When we move over to the overall work program, I'll show you where the purchasing of the staff time to
How
Calaveras
that accounts
Transit
for
will
that.
be
Okay.
reflected.
And in the revenues here on the operations budget.
Yes.
Is there any expectation you might need to add an FTE or a part-time, like an extra hire during a transition process here?
I think, we had Phil McGuire on board, and we still have that contract in place for the transition period, so we'll get that assistance through that contract for the transition.
Great.
This is a minute order, so we need a motion to approve the,
If the public
Public comments?
I'm sorry, is there any public comment? Seeing no public comment, and seeing no public, is there a motion for the minute order?
I'll move this item.
Second.
Moved by Councilmember Tofinelli, seconded by Councilmember Harmon. Any further comment? All those in favor?
Aye.
Approved 7-0. Item number 10, approving the fiscal year 2018-19 draft overall work program and overall work program agreement with Caltrans. Ms. Regier.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Like you said, this is the fiscal year 2018-19 draft overall work program. This work program is due to Caltrans the 1st of March. Pretty standard. I think I've got a new worksheet that they're passing around so you can view it easier. The other one was a little blurry. The only carryover that I've reflected in the draft is carryover that we have already allocated from the previous year, which I know there won't be any drawdowns on. After the final, staff will come back with an amendment number 1 in October, which will reflect the carryover after year-end reconciliation. So that will be reflected at that time. Like I said, the one major change to the overall work program is the work element number 9, which is the Calaveras Transit Management and Operations. If you want to review that work element in the narrative, it is on page 120.
I don't know, 18 and 19 are pretty good.
Oh, yeah. All the grants. Almost $1 million in planning grants. That's really
That's
good.
excellent.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. We'll be really busy next year.
Okay. Are you looking for council?
Oh, yeah. I'd be happy to answer any questions. I'm sorry.
Is there any council questions on the overall work program 2018-19 draft?
I have a couple. I guess my first one on page 96 of the packet would be in our regional setting. I read it a few times, but I did not see Amador County mentioned on our borders. I don't know if that
Okay.
means anything necessarily, but we mentioned all the other ones that were surrounding us. We just didn't have Amador on there. Yeah, that was really the only
Okay.
thing I noticed.
I'll make a note. Thank you.
That's actually a good catch. That's a whole northern border.
That's why I was kind of like, yeah, it's kind of strange. I guess we're not including them anymore.
Any further council comment? Any public comment? Seeing that, this is an approval of the draft overall work program, so I'm looking for a motion for the approval of the
Do
program.
we have public comment?
Counselor Caltrans, sorry, I'm just going to ask because I'm here, it'll bug me. Why is element 9 a grant fund source? I'm just wondering, so for my knowledge.
Yeah, because it's be reimbursement from the Calaveras JPA. And we can work with you on, if that's an acceptable term.
Okay. Any further public comment? Any further council comment? Do we have a motion to approve the draft overall work program?
I'll move the item.
Second.
Moved by Councilmember Hills, seconded by Councilmember Tofinelli. All those in favor?
Aye.
Approved 7-0. Item number 11, county report.
Thank you, Council. Jeff Krovitz, Public Works County, Calaveras County. First item, capital improvement program reports from Calaveras County projects. Give you a quick update on Wagon Trail. Public Works has completed 2 RFPs, one for project management for the next phases of the project, as well as an RFP for PS&E, which stands for Plans, Specifications, and Estimates. It's the creation of the environmental document, it's the production of the construction documents, as well as design support during construction for the engineering firm. And those have been circulated through internally through the department and now moved off to external circulation through the various county departments. Our next expectation is once comments are received, we can accommodate those comments and then push it out to public purchase with the anticipation of awarding those 2 contracts fairly simultaneously.
Do you have a time frame for that?
I don't yet, but we have scheduled circulation for between 3 and 4 weeks, and then there is another month for us to essentially negotiate the details and the costs of those, and then 1 other month in addition to schedule and get it in front of the board for approval. So that whole duration is 2 to 3 months from now. Okay. In addition, on Wagon Trail, been working with Drake Hagelin, the project manager, on the co-op agreement for right-of-way acquisition, where we are going to enter into an agreement with Caltrans for the acquisition of the right-of-way for the portions of the project that we will be constructing. Feeling that the last time we went through right-of-way acquisition along Highway 4, it was a rather painful process internally. We thought it would be well worth the additional dollars it will take for us to move that into a state process. They do it on a regular basis. They're more expert at it than we are. Questions on that? Okay. Moving on to the CIP, we've had some movement on the Mountain Ranch Road improvement projects. It includes pedestrian improvements as well as some circulation improvements and undergrounding improvements, and also environmental mitigation improvements on Mountain Ranch Road associated with the construction of the jail and the sheriff's facility a number of years ago. The holdup on that has been the analysis and moving ahead on the environmental document with archaeological resources, more specifically the cultural resources portion. It was apparently a very desirable place for Native Americans to live within this area because we're so close to San Andreas Creek and the weather is very temperate. So there are a lot of resources that are buried. And what has been resolved recently is that there will be mitigation and observation actively during the construction of the project, rather than moving ahead to what's called an XP2 or a second dig to identify specifics. So we've got protocols defined, mitigations defined, that will be part of the environmental document and part of the construction document, so that we can move ahead a little more quickly, hopefully with that project, bringing it forward. Then third, on capital improvement program, Public Works has started the drafting of an RFP for consultant services for the conversion of historical asset management documentation, as well as the gathering of new asset management documentation for our county asset management system. This is high priority for us among our other high priorities, because much of our funding that comes for regular maintenance and operations, and some of our funding competitiveness for other grant funding opportunities within the ATP program are dependent upon us having a robust and active asset management system. We've also scheduled some meetings with COG and City to explore potential cost savings in partnerships in terms of data collection. However, the counties and the cities' priorities are a little bit different. Their asset management system is a little more advanced than ours. We've done ours on an average of every decade, and I think they've been maintaining theirs fairly often. So our needs are slightly different, but I do believe that there are some places where we can marry up. So that's all I have on capital improvement programs. Yeah, because I've got other capital improvement programs to report on when I get to transit. Anything on those particular items or other capital improvement projects that you want updates on?
Council.
I'm just curious if there's any word on the West Point Bicycle Path project, if that's, any updates on that? Are we going to move forward with that construction project?
The only project, active project that I know up in West Point is really the second phase of pedestrian improvements between the school and the state route along County Road. And it's about a 1 block worth of improvements. And I don't believe that it's truly a bike path. It's really more of a pedestrian improvement project.
Okay.
Unfortunately, that one has not been as high of a priority for us because we've missed a number of our deadlines and have accepted the dollars for that. So it becomes an internal in-house project that we are getting to as quickly as we can.
Okay, just curious, didn't want to
Are we speaking?
tie up the funds or lose the funds, or if we could reallocate them or do something.
The funds have been provided from COG to Public Works, and Public Works holds those funds to complete that portion of the project. We completed the first portion in the immediate vicinity of the school, and it's just a matter of that last block. Fairly complicated, even though it's very small.
Yeah.
So are we talking about the same project?
I believe we are.
Okay, that's great.
I think this is the only one up there.
Yeah, unfortunately.
I guess, Jeff, where the question came about is on the page 146, it actually has the CIP program listed in the agenda, and it actually lists it as the Pine Street West Point bike path.
Okay. My understanding is that it's probably historical title.
Okay.
And not necessarily reflective of what the program elements are.
Okay. But that is the 120,000 that you're referencing?
Yes.
Okay. Any other council comments? Is there any news on the O'Burns Ferry Road left turn pocket?
Yes, PG&E began relocating the pole line. They discovered they had, what should I say, under-engineered 1 or 2 of the poles on one end of the line, sent those back into essentially engineering on an emergency basis. They still expect to be completed with the entire pole line relocation, I think sometime mid-April.
So are we looking to see that done this year then?
Well, to date, we only have funding for the utility relocation that then clears right-of-way for widening. We have 100% PS&E for construction documents on the road widening, but we do not have construction funding for that yet. That is one of our higher priority projects, and we've been working through COG to push that out and hopefully find funding to do that. It's been a long time coming.
Any further council comments?
Thank you for asking on that.
Yeah. Continuing that point, and you and I have had those conversations, so we know generally what those timelines are. And we have set that as one of the priorities in District 4, is to getting that done. But it's going to really hinge too on whether or not there's any SB1 money that might be available and where else we might be able to secure that funding source.
Well, the RMRA portion of SB1, the road maintenance portion of SB1, it's not really applicable to a widening project. This could be considered potentially capacity increasing because we've moved those left-hand turn users out of the traveled way. So we've essentially captured more space in the traveled way for through traffic. So that side of the SB1 can't be used or would be less competitive there. So the other side of SB1, which is a series of different grant opportunities and planning grant opportunities, it may be a better project. We actually believe that the best source of funds for this would be HSIP, the Highway Safety Improvement Program through Caltrans, because we can show significant amount of local funds already expended. We can show essentially a shovel-ready project that has environmental clearance. So it should compete well.
It's a project that's been underway since 1995, and I appreciate the priority that it's been given recently in moving this thing along. We're not going to go anywhere if we can't get those poles moved, so I'm glad PG&E is stepping up and willing to facilitate getting that done on a rather rapid basis. So thank them and thank you for doing that.
Okay. Any other questions on CIP?
Okay. Don't go.
I'm not. I was stepping aside for public comment.
Item number 12, the transit report. We have the transit year-end performance report and then the CIP. Mr. Krovitz.
Thank you. Once again, for television land, Jeff Krovitz, County Public Works. You have the transit year-end performance report. Most of it has been certified through the auditor controller. We had submitted this for inclusion into the TAC last December, and it is working its way through the process. There has been some questions or consternation about the reported fare box recovery. So I wanted to address that real briefly. It's showed in this calculation at 12.95%. That is necessarily inflated because of proceeds from salvage of old transit buses. We estimate that to be the equivalent of about 1.5% or so. So even if that's taken out, and which is one of the concerns of the Auditor Controller's Office, we are still over the 10% fare box ratio recovery. You can see that we have less riders by a little bit. We have higher fuel costs, and we provided more vehicle service miles, but our maintenance cost went down. So when all of those metrics are combined, that's where you get that fare box recovery ratio. So again, it's noted in here that the fare box recovery ratio for this performance report, while it has been reviewed by the auditor, they're still a little bit concerned, and they want to hear from outside auditors before they certify that. And the fare box recovery ratio also excludes the intercity service, the revenues and expenses, as is allowable for the first 2 or 3 years of operation of a new route. Okay, so any more specific questions on the year-end transit report for 16-17?
Yes, Council.
The question I have, I think I figured it myself, but when you have on some of these performance measures, we only have 9 months or 3 months. Is that just because that's how many months that particular route was in operation because we switched up mid-year?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Had to do with the switch of routes in April of 17.
Right.
So you either have a reporting for 9 months or 3 months.
Right, all right. I kind of put that together. I just wanted to clarify.
Good catch. Thank you.
Any other council comments?
Okay, I'll continue on with the transit report on the capital improvement program for transit. The Cal OES bus stop lighting project that was referenced previously, there are lighting upgrades being funded by that project to 18 of our transit stops throughout the county, 18 of our 22. We have somewhere between 8 and 10 of those completed. All of the materials have been purchased and are in the yard, and internal public works staff is doing that installation. So we expect that installation to be done this month or before the end of the month, when there's a potential for those funds expiring. Today we're approximately 50% complete. We started it about a week and a half ago. With the actual install, we had been acquiring the lighting for about 60 or 90 days. So, bus shelter project, that is the phase 4 shelter project that is adding we're proposing a number of new bus stops with shelters. Shelters have been purchased, they're being stored in the yard. Engineering has been completed, it's been circulated through Caltrans. We have an issue that we are working through with Caltrans on pedestrian considerations at the McCollum Hill site on either side of State Route 49, and we have a consult with Caltrans scheduled for next week. I need to let Amber know on that one so she can be involved. The The plan in the transition for this particular capital improvement project is that Public Works will complete a shovel-ready project. So all engineering will be done, all permits will be done, and it will be ready to list, project. Then the JPA will be the party responsible for the advertisement, bid, and award of that capital program, as well as the construction monitoring or construction observation as needed for that installation project. So that the plan is to have that ready to go before the end of the fiscal year, so that as the JPA takes over the operations of transit, they can also take over the operation of that particular project. The AVL project, which is a tracking radio communications project for install in each of the buses, we have decided, since we were unable to push that far enough forward, that that one is on hold and it will be picked up by the JPA after they assume operations. Since I am on the subject, we received on Monday of this week approval from Caltrans for the operations contract because there were some changes during the negotiation with the apparent low-only bidder, and I received signed contracts from the bidder today. That is on schedule for Board of Supervisor approval on the next Tuesday's meeting.
Still on for the 13th?
That's next Tuesday. Right. We didn't have to move it.
Okay.
We actually did have to move. We had to move it from the 27th to the 13th. But the first date of operation is still April 2nd under the new contract. That contract is a one-year contract with an option for 1 + 1 more year, so 2 12-month extensions. And that will be up to the JPA to determine what they want to do on the anniversary date in 2019. So that is moving ahead. We've had a series of meetings with COG and Mr. McGuire on the transition. We've identified a number of things that need to be covered and transferred, not only assets, but of course inventory as well as internal contracts for things such as advertising before the movies that you guys see at the Movies and Angels. All those things need to be transitioned or stopped and then restarted again. So we're working through that list to provide the information as necessary and as requested. So we're looking forward to this transition and essentially seeing this system hopefully be able to improve and provide more and better service for less money. That's the goal, and we support that. So any questions on the transition?
A question would be, you'd expressed delays in maintenance before. Is that time?
Sorry, I didn't hear that.
Yeah, you had expressed delays in the maintenance, moving maintenance over. Is there still a timeline that we can
Yes,
expect?
that was one of the things that we had to modify in the contract. The apparent winner of the contract notified us that they needed full 5 weeks or full 6 weeks from inception of contract to when they can begin the maintenance. So essentially for that 6-week period from April 2nd to mid-May, maintenance will remain within the Equipment Service Center of Public Works. And so we had to reduce the cost of the operations contract by the amount of cost for Public Works to continue that maintenance. And then that maintenance will happen in the middle of May. So that maintenance transition.
Now, does this help us in saving our 5311 funds?
I can't answer that one. That one's, I don't have the answer to that question.
Okay,
I will get back to you on that.
thank you.
Any further council questions? Jeff, I just want to clarify, you said 18 of the 22 stops will be lit up, so we have 4 that aren't going to have lighting at all.
That's the plan for lighting improvements.
And then on the new shelters, that's independently and above the 22 stops that are currently in play?
Yes, and that would be included in the new stops. And they're all solar.
So new shelters will come with lighting.
Yes.
How many total shelters how many total stops are we now looking at by the end of the transition
I don't have the number of stops. I don't
How
have
big
the
is
number of shelters. I do know that we have 22 shelters out there, and our current Phase 4 is for an additional 6.
Okay.
Okay.
But we don't have spots for all 6 at this time.
Yes, we have
We do
spots
now.
identified.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
We have plans developed for those sites.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
Do we want to possibly work with the new JPA as to those locations so that if they're better served in a better spot, that the JPA can have some input on that?
Those, if I can answer that?
Yeah, go ahead.
As we've been developing the Phase 4 shelter project, at least a year ago, during meetings of the ITC as well as other meetings with COG, we identified these stops. And so these things were done jointly with City of Angels and COG. And each of those stops have already had the right-of-way analysis. The majority of these stops are on state highways because our transit system is a backbone of state highways. That's how they get around. There is a limited number of service on local roads, as well as the ability to do deviated service from those fixed routes. So those right-of-way agreements are already in place with Caltrans. If we want to change those, then we have to go back on process to do those again. Because we are existing in others right-of-way.
Any further council comment? Thank you.
Okay, I believe that's it.
I do have one question for you. Can you forward the locations of those 6
Yes.
to me?
Would you like?
I also would like to see them.
Actually, maybe get all 22 and the 6.
I want to identify the 6. If you want to see all 22 of them, you can ask. Just have her identify the 6, and then if she wants to forward the other 22 with those locations to,
Just for information.
just for information to the COG board. Since we're going to take this over, it's probably a pretty good idea to know exactly where all of them are at and the 6 that are identified that we have funding for.
Okay, I can email the site plans for those locations and the cover sheet on the current construction docs. Would that work?
Yeah, if you would just email to
Amber.
and let her distribute to us, would be fine.
And just a note on all the other assets, we'll be bringing that information to the new transit JPA board. So you'll see kind of a whole list of all the stops and assets. But in terms of the new stops, I think it'll be good to see. Yeah, Melissa just reminded me that our COG online CIP also has that project on there
Okay.
with information.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
Anything else?
We want Dave up next. We want a shot at Dave.
Congratulations to Dave.
Item number 13, city report. Mr. Hanham.
Mr. Hannum, you owe me lunch. You never showed up.
Oh, no, you never showed
No,
up.
I was there on Friday at the Mexican to eat by myself.
Oh, did you? Oh, I was there, then we missed each other because I was there eating by myself. So we must have got
That's a big
past, but we'll
place.
definitely go to lunch before I get out of here. I just want to report on our projects. One is regarding and I didn't get a chance to comment at the council meeting last night regarding the CIP project. I did update you'll be proud to know that I finally updated the CIP for Angels Creek Trail. So you'll be seeing that. So yeah, I didn't get a chance to tell you last night, so I figured I'd save it for tonight. So that was a good thing. So yeah, and as of date, we've expended about 10% of the 1.8 million, but we'll start cranking out on it now that the project's, and that's one of my updates on. We finally have finished, I think, the final documents with Caltrans. Very nice process, by the way. I just want to say that's been a wonderful process to go through local assistance. I recommend it for everybody. And my little sarcasm there is because it took us almost 6 months and about yay thick of reports that had to get done to do those projects. But we've finally done that. We've got our last set of approvals from Caltrans, and so hopefully we'll have those projects split up and move forward. The Angels Creek Murphy Grade Road Improvement Project, we approved a consultant, at least staff level. We approved a consultant. I guess we can report it out, I guess. No, not yet. No, council's got to approve it. The council will get it at the 20th, on the meeting on the 20th. But for a recommendation for a consultant to start that project up and going, and we'll be seeing a lot more movement on that. In terms of the Angels Camp 449 project study report, we're waiting for invoices from Caltrans, so that's why we haven't expended any of the money. That's a Caltrans direct project, and I think we're supposed to be getting the draft document here next week, or yeah, very soon. Yeah, hopefully it gets here before March 30th. So, so we're still waiting on that. We're waiting on that document. The Collector Road striping project, we've been working with COG on different avenues of how we were going to use that money. However, I think we're going to move forward and use that money on the Collector Stripe Road. Yeah, the HSIP stuff. So we're looking at other funding sources for that project, but we're still moving forward on that. We're still waiting for the ATP stuff to finalize that to get started and go out to bid for consultants. So that'll be coming up here pretty shortly. I'm trying to think what else. And the Capella Road, the sidewalk gap project. So those will be projects that will be starting up. I think that's all I have to report on projects. One last announcement is that I've resigned from the City of Angels. So I tendered my resignation as the Director of Planning and Building, and we'll be moving on here. And my last day will be March 30th, at least full-time for the city. So I just want to thank all the COG, especially the COG staff for the last 10 years. If I didn't have COG staff, I wouldn't have been able to do a lot of the stuff that I've done over the 10 years. And I appreciate everything they've done from when Melissa was here as the executive director, and Amber, and even Tim McSorley, and Melissa Raggio saved me a ton of times with monies and budgets and stuff. And so I just want to thank them for all their support and all their help. And I want to thank the board for supporting all our projects over the last 10 years, 9 years. We've got a lot of projects through, and we've got a lot more coming, hopefully. And I want to thank the board for all their support for the City of Angels, and looking forward to see what happens with the transit agency, and hopefully everything works out there. I know that was a big issue that I know I played some part in it early on. But other than that, that's all I have. Is there any questions or any comments? I'll be happy to answer your questions.
Council?
Congratulations on being with us for the time that you've been and for the time that you've taken. You've always been available to answer questions. You've always been there for clarity on things that were going on within the city. I definitely appreciate the time that you've taken to do that. It is a very complex process, and you are extremely knowledgeable in what you do. And I'm sure that whoever takes your next services will be well benefited by having you around.
Yeah, well, thank you very much. I appreciate that. And one last thing on the shelter stops, we don't want to move our locations. Our council approved those. So way back when, I think a year or two ago, we approved those locations. They're not moving. No.
Okay, fair enough.
All right.
Dave, you would be sorely missed.
Yes.
Thank you for your time for the city and
Thank you.
what you've done, and enjoyed working with you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
I wanted to mention that too. The city's going to miss you a lot. And sorry to see you go. So, but
Yeah.
I don't know yet where you're going, so I have to ask you where you're going.
Oh, I can answer that.
Good.
I'm going to be the new director of planning, or the director of community and economic development for the city of Chowchilla.
Oh,
So so go back down in the valley. So, but yeah, so it had a lot of opportunities, and there was a lot of big projects they're working on down there that just kind of went there. I worked there about 13 years ago as well, so deputy director. So it's kind of going back, but yeah, it's another opportunity. Doesn't mean I'll be gone forever. Like they say, the jobs roll around, come around, come around, come around. So. So yeah, but
well,
anyway.
we wish you well.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Thanks.
And lunch before we leave.
May have to go Chinese.
Apparently so.
Caltrans report.
Kevin Schur, Caltrans.
Carl already did.
Carl's already gone, and so
Carl beat him.
my first note is actually our Caltrans director, if you haven't heard, has moved on to the private sector. So we have a new Caltrans director, Lori Berman. She's been with the department for about 20 plus years. I forget if it was 22 or 28, but she's been around for a while, and she's been up in headquarters. So this was an easy transition for her. So you'll be hearing her name on documents and going around. It's no longer Malcolm Dockery. I'm not sure if everyone's been paying attention, but Cycle 4 for ATP, they have the guidelines that are final draft. If you go onto the CTC website, they have sort of a download of what's going on. They're going to take it to the commission on, I believe it's March 21st for presentation of the draft guidelines, and then they're going to approve the actual guidelines on the 16th, of May 16th, sorry. May 16th will also be the time that they're going to do call for projects. But all this can be found on the CTC website. If you can't find it, let Amber know. I'll send you the links for this kind of stuff. So things are moving forward, but it's good to be aware. It also gives you some details about what considered is, what Calaveras is considered. Considered, small urban because the population is between 5,001 and 200,000. There's a threshold of the funding of 10% going to this section all through California. So there's a lot of details I can't get into. It's a 36-page packet. But if you need any questions answered, you can always call me and we can talk about it and assist you if we need to. The COG, I believe, put in 2 partnerships with Amador for grants this, or was it 3? 2, I believe it was 2. Was it 3? Sorry.
Yes.
We have, my other point would be is the 17 grants came into our office from our district, so that's a good thing. That shows a lot of people are outreaching, trying to find ways to do planning and think about the future for development. So my staff is have until the 16th to review it. Then it goes back to headquarters. They review it, and then they give an ultimate decision of what projects should move forward. Calaveras has done very well in the past couple of years. We've had 6 or 7, I'm trying to remember now, in the past 2-3 years. So Calaveras has done very well, but we still have to review these and move forward. If you have any questions along the time frames, if it's not looking like we're moving forward, giving you answers, please let me know. You have my numbers and email. I'll keep up to date with you guys. Another thing was, I don't know if anyone attended it, we did have a ribbon cutting for the roundabout in Plymouth just recently. That was pretty exciting. That was the first one in our district. So everyone knows that's a great success for our district at least, and hopefully more will come. And let's see, Amber did send me, you have 3 grants right now. You have the Murphy's grant, you have the Valley Springs grant, you have the Pope Street grant, and then you have the Angels Camp grant. Those will be hopefully moving forward pretty soon because I'll be signing the papers to proceed, and that means that Amber can go off for RFPs and get these things rolling. So that'll be coming through. And then just a side note, just because I was driving up here, I thought it'd be me present to say it. I know it's a political year, it's an election year for some people. Just be aware, if you can pass it on to anyone, that signs in our right-of-way are a concern over time, and I did notice that some of them might be already in our right-of-way. I'm just trying to get ahead of that we don't want our maintenance crews coming out and ripping up signs or taking signs down. We want to support the county and their efforts. So if there's any confusion on where they can place signs, they can always contact our office and we can help them. We don't want to see any signs being ripped up in that situation. So if you have any other questions, it is my fiance's birthday tonight, so I'd love to get out here as soon as possible. But if not, I'm here. So any questions?
I have a question.
Sure.
And perhaps I could get an email if you want to get out here quick.
No.
Carl was here in December, and he announced then that Caltrans was going to spend $42 million on projects here in Calaveras County.
Okay.
Can I get a list of those projects?
Sure.
It's over the next 3 years. They're going to spend $42 million.
Yeah, I think that was the draft 2018 shop
the show.
list, so
Yeah, yeah.
I can send.
Can you send that to me?
Yeah.
Okay, Amber
And-
can do it, so.
Okay,
And
no
actually,
worries.
to update you, they did add $10 million for the Wagon Trail project, so now it's $52 million
So that's
for
52
Calaveras.
million. So wagon, 10 million for wagon,
Can you
so
say that to
yeah.
everybody?
Yeah, and that's proposed 2018 draft shop, and that'll go to the CTC, I believe, this month in March. So it's not final yet, but
It's not final, but
yeah.
with your help, it will be.
Hopefully, right? Get things done. But yes, if the lists don't work out or it's not the right list, contact me and I'll find it. That's not a problem.
Okay.
Anything else from anyone? No,
Thank you
for your
very
time.
much.
Thank you.
Say happy birthday.
I will, thank you.
Item number 15, council reports. Mr. Murides. Justin?
Yes. We had a Social Services Transportation Advisory Council on February 22nd. Went through a couple different things. They're going to be conducting the unmet transit needs in March and April, and then there'll be some reviews after that. And then there's going to be some community needs assessments in different areas of the county, and I'm sure that there's going to be flyers coming around on that. I don't have any of those, but that is going to be happening in the next few months. That's all I have to report.
I have nothing to report.
Well, you're all invited to a grand opening of an ice cream parlor, Yummy Haha, in Angels Camp. And it's going to be next Wednesday at 4:30 to about 5 of your ribbon cutting. Okay, so you're all invited for its homemade ice cream. And by the way, my sons, the Scoop brothers, own it. So I'm doing a little plug.
I see.
What's the 14th?
But it's good for Angels Camp because
Okay.
everybody loves ice cream and it's homemade.
Yeah, we're going to rename them the Scoop Brothers.
What's that?
I say we're going to rename them the
Oh,
Scoop
rename the whole-
Brothers.
The
Yeah.
Scoop brothers. That's true. Maybe.
Well, I am personally transitioning myself. I'm moving to the Angels Camp.
Oh.
And although I'm still I'm appointed public member, my viewpoint for the county will still be countywide. But I am now running full circle. After 14 years, I'm back in the city of Angels. So,
Made the transition go well.
it has been. Staff reports.
I don't have anything else to add. I included a detailed update on the projects and things that we've been working on. If you have any questions on that, I'd be happy to answer anything.
I do have a question on page 165, talking about the self-help counties. It does say something about self-help counties or imposing comprehensive development plans. I was curious, being we passed a tax measure this past year, would we be able to put some of that money aside, allocated specifically for transportation projects? Would that make us a self-help county?
Yeah, I believe it. A tax specific for transportation.
No,
would
I'm
make
saying we
you
already
self-help.
voted last year for a tax, cannabis tax. Now, if we were able to allocate a specific percentage of that and put that into a comprehensive development plan, would we then qualify to be a self-help county? Because if we don't do something like that, we have to ask the citizens to vote on a tax initiative. And being that we already did that, maybe we could piggyback off of that to kind of streamline that so that we're not asking people to come out of their pockets once again after the state already increased the fuel taxes.
Yeah, I'm not aware of the legal nuances on adding to an existing approved, voted on tax.
Okay. We would need the council here for that.
I believe it'd be probably the jurisdiction that approved the tax, would be responsible for that.
Okay.
Any other council comments? Seeing none. We're going to have a closed session after the adjournment here. Next scheduled meeting of the COG is April 4th at 5:30 at these chambers. Thank you.